Radiohead only needed 4 chords to make this absolute masterpiece of a song, and it's not the 4 chords you might be thinking. Oftentimes when we talk about modern music, pop music, rock music, whatever, we talk about the same 4 chords. You can use 4 chords to write so many songs, right? Normally it's like some variation of that. But the 4 chords that Radiohead used are completely unlike any version of the 4 chords we typically expect with a lot of modern popular music. And it sounds like this. Okay, what an insane intro, and it's so simple, right? It's 4 notes, really, but it's actually 3 because one is just repeated, right? Check this out. This is so sick. That's it, right? Did you hear it? It goes like this. Those are the 4 notes, and C is just repeated, so really all we're using is 3 different notes here. Now, what makes this so interesting and what makes this so, I don't know, intrigue is the word that comes to mind, but it's this like mysterious, ominous kind of feeling that we get from this. And part of the reason that we're getting that is because the notes that we're actually using here are C, A flat, G, and then we play C again, but what comes after that? The first chord that we get, and this is one of the 4 chords that Radiohead used to make this song incredible, it goes like this. C, A flat, G flat, and then we get C again before a C major chord. Now, why is that so interesting? Because this C major chord, we normally attach to the C major scale, right? Except here, we very clearly have already indicated that we're using something completely different by playing an A flat, right? So let's just play a C major chord, and then let's add an A flat to it. Whoa. We get a whole bunch of different possibilities here. There's a lot of things that this A flat could mean, right? One of them could simply be we're adding it onto a C major chord. Now that in and of itself is an incredibly mysterious, intriguing sound, right? It almost feels like it feels like space, right? And we hear that in a lot of things that represent space. There's something else interesting in there as well, because that's an F minor chord. Huh. When we play an A flat, we're almost turning this into like a C major plus F minor. The only thing we're missing here is F itself. So could it be that we're getting kind of almost an F minor chord? Well, we sort of start to answer that question when we let this play out to the next chord. There it is. There's 3 of our 4 chords, right? C major, and then very quickly we move on to, this is a D flat major 7 chord, but we keep our G in there, which to me is just such a beautiful sound. It basically implies that we're using the sharp 11 on that D flat major chord. And then our next chord is this E flat, which we could call E flat 6 because we hold our C through all of these. C major, D flat major, E flat 6, right? Oh, it's so beautiful. And so mysterious and ominous. C, D flat, E flat. Basically, that's what we're doing. Now, when we combine all those sounds, we see some really interesting things happen. C major, of course, we expect, like we said, is going to come with that C major scale, but in this case, it very clearly doesn't, because we move right to D flat major 7. Now, what does that mean, right? What does that tell us about what we might be doing here? Well, we've taken this sound, and now we've added... Whoa. What is this? This is like Phrygian dominant, right? It's like Phrygian, but instead of the minor third, we have the major third left over from the C, except the next chord, we're gonna now use that minor third. So these are the notes. If I had to say what are the notes we're working with in this chord progression, it's this. So that's Phrygian, that's C Phrygian, okay? That's like C Phrygian dominant. And we're just kind of using both of them. Now, which one is it? I don't know. I don't really think it matters, right? And in fact, Tom York wrote this on the piano. This was the first song that he wrote after OK Computer when he started working on Kid A, which is the album that this song is on. And Tom had a really difficult time after the OK Computer album and tour. So this song coming out, the first sort of emotional expression of where he wanted to go next in music. This was just a fascinating departure from what OK Computer had been. Now, Tom York didn't view himself as a good piano player. And I think that's important when we think about the compositional aspects of this, because we can analyze it till the cows come home. That's fine. There's a lot to learn from it. But it's important to remember that sometimes the things that stick out to you, the things that you hear in your own ear, in your own mind, those are the things that you should try to find a way to express, not worrying about what is this in terms of a theory perspective. It's sometimes helpful to think about it that way, but sometimes you can get caught up on that. And I think it's pretty evident that Tom York was probably writing this mostly just from inside, right? Not thinking about, well, is this Phrygian? Is it Phrygian dominant? It doesn't matter. But it is fun for us to come back in and look at, because these chords, oh man. They're just so sick, right? And we're still going around just these three chords. We haven't introduced the fourth chord yet, but we're about to hear it pretty soon. Still C to D flat, E flat. There we go. Yeah, that's it. The fourth chord is F major, which is fascinating because when we started talking about those first three notes that introduced the entire song, we started talking about F minor. We started talking about D flat major, right? Which those two chords are very related. Notice how I can just keep that on top and add a D flat and it changes the whole chord, right? So we have this sound. We're talking about Phrygian. We're talking about Phrygian dominant, right? All these different things. None of them are F major. When we hear that F major chord, there's this like emergence of like a brightness to it. That's just like, oh, here we are now, and now everything seems brighter, but then we get that same walk up from C to D flat to E flat. So that F major, I think, is just such a unique sound here. It continues to raise questions about like, well, what is going on here? What are we in a mode? Because this blows our Phrygian dominant thing out of the water, because both of those scales do not include A. Oh, and the melody there. That is so cool. The melody so far has only used 4 notes, right? F and C, and then we add B flat and D flat, and that's it. And I love how when it says in its right place, we get a feeling of resolution to C major, right? Because to me, this whole song kind of, it feels like it's in C major, which is kind of interesting because we immediately depart. I mean, D flat major 7 is about the farthest thing away from the general tonal center of C major that you could possibly get, right? But D flat major 7, E flat, that's closer to C minor than it is to C major. Like it literally has C minor almost in it, and especially if we're calling this E flat 6 because our melody is the C. Just take out the B flat and we have literally C minor before going back to C major. So we have this minor major thing going on, and that also introduces this mysteriousness, this ominous feeling with all this harmony happening. It's just so cool. And then we get that brightness of the F before we go right back to our walk-up. Brightness. I bet you never heard an F major chord that can make a C major chord almost sound dark. You know what I mean? Like right here we go F major, C, and this C chord, because we're going back to this thing, it almost sounds dark. How cool is that? This is the only other section we get. Wow, okay, so now we start the phrase on D flat major 7. We go to C major, E flat major, we're just using the same chords, we just changed the order, but I want you to take note of how much it changes the vibe here. It's very clearly a different section with a different feel, right? Even though we're using the same chords, all we had to do was switch the order up and we get a totally different feeling. I mean, initially we go C and then we build up. And that almost feels like the question mark before resolving back to C major, D flat major, E flat major, C major, right? But here, now we start on that D flat. And when we start on that D flat, it gives it this feeling of like, we're not resolved now. Now we're somewhere else. Where are we going? Then we get C briefly before that same right? That E flat almost functions, it's weird. In this particular song, think about this for a second. I'm just thinking about this now. E flat, it's not a dominant chord, but it almost takes on the function of a dominant chord. Here's what I mean, right? Right, that's a 1-5-1 resolution. That resolution, the power of that resolution, the feeling of this chord wanting to resolve. It's like it's propped up on a ledge before allowing itself. It's like if we left it there, that's the ultimate cliffhanger. Like if I went and walked away, right? You'd be screaming. There you go. Just so we're good. But that feel, I almost feel like we're getting that same cliffhanger feeling from this E flat chord. Even when we change the order, that E flat chord to me still has that kind of, it's like this propped up feeling that wants to resolve, except instead of in this section, we're not getting the resolution to C major, we're getting this like additional question. We're still going around. We haven't fully resolved it yet. And then we get, oh, there's our resolution, but we immediately put it back up on that cliffhanger again before going around. And eventually, then we go back to this section. When we hear this, it has so much power wanting to go, right? It just wants to resolve to that major third. So I think that's right there. It maybe is not quite as compelling as a traditional cadence of 5-1, but it has its own pull because this E flat really wants to just slip right up a half step to the major third to resolve to that C major chord, right? Which is why when we have our different sections, we go to F. That's kind of an unexpected thing, right? And especially that third section when we go to D flat as our starting chord, it leaves everything still unresolved until finally we get It's absolutely unbelievable. It is an absolute masterpiece. And it just blows my mind that we did the whole thing, first of all, starting with 3 notes, and then 4 chords. That's it. C major, D flat major, E flat major, F major. By the way, I want you to think about this for a second. Think about how dark this whole song sounds. How dark and ominous and mysterious and dissonant and unresolved and questioning. It's all these things, right? Every chord in this whole song is major. There's not a single minor chord in this entire song, but because of the relationships between those major chords, boy, does it take on a whole different feel. That is not happy major. That's why Radiohead used 4 chords to make this song a masterpiece, but they are not the 4 chords that you would expect. They are not your typical that we would expect in rock songs and pop songs and all kinds of stuff. That's not it at all. We have... What? It is just so different. When this album came out, people felt all kinds of ways about it. Some people didn't like it at all, some people liked it a lot, but it has, I think, become widely accepted and thought of as one of Radiohead's greatest works, and for good reason. Whether you want to break this down and figure out every definition of every scale and chord relationship, or you just want to go, hey, there are 4 chords that sound really, really cool, the melody works really well, the lyrics, despite being very, very strange, they meant something to Tom when he wrote them, and it was one of the purest artistic expressions of what he was feeling at that time. And now, decades later, we are left with an absolute masterpiece. I had to break this down because I can't believe we haven't talked about Radiohead on this channel yet. And as you can see, it's something that I have been geeking out about. So, hey, really quick, just a couple days left to grab 30% off my Intro to Piano course. It'll teach you everything you need to know to get started playing this instrument, and it's the best way to support the channel. Use code LEARNPIANO30 at checkout to grab 30% off only for the next couple days. Your support means the world to me. It's how I'm able to continue doing what we do on this channel. So thank you so much. Please let me know in the comments below what songs by Radiohead you think would be super fun to break down on this channel, because I am rip-roaring ready to go with this stuff because it's amazing. As always, thank you so much for watching this video, and we will see you in the next one.